What is going on, guys? John Kelly here to talk about Dana White's Contender Series, Season 5, Episode 2. Before we get started, just going to recap last week. Obviously, started off this season with a bang. It was nice to get on the board. You know, we ended up sweeping, had bets on AJ Fletcher, minus 145. For those that didn't watch it, he landed an awesome flying knee that basically put Damiani out before he even hit the mat. So that was an awesome win for him. Cashed that at minus 145. Ended up cashing on Joe Anderson Brito. Brito looked really good, very explosive. I thought he won the first 2 rounds. Outside of the crafty submission attempts from Diego Lopez, he stayed alive. I thought he looked good, landed takedowns, stayed safe, and then ended up in the 3rd round, nasty eye poke, ended up stopping the fight. But due to the rules, after a certain point in the fight, as long as it's deemed incidental, it will go to judges' scorecards. I thought the right guy won, even with the point deduction. So happy to cash that at plus 144 on that one. And then, of course, we hit the Degen Parlay, all 4 fights. We hit those 2 that I talked about. Won a close, kind of sketchy decision on Altamirano. Close fight. Odds weren't justified, but we hit him for the parlay. And then, of course, Azamat Murakanov ended up taking care of business as the biggest favorite on the card. Big skill discrepancy there. So super happy to get on the board for the first video. Ended up cashing the Degenerate Parlay at plus 605 along with the 2 individual bets as well. So I can assure you every week will not be that smooth. Hopefully it will be, but you know, while I'm an optimist, I'm also a realist. So I do not expect those results every single week, but we're going to do our best to try to replicate it. Certainly some good spots on this week's card. Like I said, Season 5, Episode 2. Do me a favor. Before we get started, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, trying to grow my channel. I definitely appreciate it. We'll start things off in the bantamweight division. We have Muin, Gafurov going up against Chad Anheliger. Gafurov, the minus 235 favorite. The comeback on Anheliger is plus 190 currently, and that's at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gafurov, I think, is a legitimate problem. Like, I think he has a future in the UFC. We see a lot of times these Contender Series fighters, you know, they land a big finish or whatever, make a statement on Contender Series, but you can kind of tell by their skill set that they really don't have what it takes to really have any sort of future in the UFC. And, you know, it is what it is. You know, much respect to anybody that fights there, but just being honest, like, a lot of these guys just don't have what it takes. I think Gafurov does have what it takes. I think he does have a future in the UFC. He's fought way better competition than his opponent here. He's fought over in 1 championship. He lost a very close decision to John Lineker in 2019. 2 of those 3 rounds were very close. Some people thought he actually beat him, which was pretty impressive, but he's a 2-time Combat Sambo world champion over in Tajikistan. He's also an FILA world grappling champion, and his striking is impressive to me. He has like that. When you think about his striking, think Umar Nurmagomedov, think Timur Valiev. You know, that's the kind of striking that he has. You know, sharp boxing, a lot of flashy spinning, kicking attacks, that sort of thing. But, I mean, he's just very well-rounded. But like I said, all of his losses are pretty respectable, and he's just fought the much better level of competition. And, you know, I told you guys I always like the stories when they build up these stories. So Gafurov is definitely a crazy story, inspirational story. So his father was actually murdered a few weeks after he was born, and very, very tragic. You can look it up and read about it. But he had some kind of uncles and family members sort of stepping in to play that father figure role. And one of those uncles is the president of the Combat Sambo Federation in Tajikistan. So that was where he was sort of forced into Combat Sambo and fighting at a young age, and he grew to love it over time. And then when he realized he had like legitimate skills and continued to work on it, this guy's been doing it his entire life, and I think he's entirely legitimate. So it's a great story. I'm rooting for him, and I think he dominates this matchup. On the flip side, Chad Anheliger is he's not a terrible fighter. He does have some power, not a horrible grappler. He does like to play off his back a little bit after getting taken down, which is concerning for somebody that doesn't have that good at jiu-jitsu. He's going to be at a strength disadvantage. He used to fight at flyweight. This one's at bantamweight. Like I said, he's coming off a 2-year layoff since knocking out Brady Highstand. You guys might recognize Brady Highstand, just fought Ricky Tercio's for the Ultimate Fighter finale. He also trains with Hakeem Dawodu over in Canada. I just think it's a levels thing. Like, he's outgunned on the feet. He's definitely outgunned in the grappling. All 5 of his career losses have come by submission. And like I said, he does have power, sort of a weird striking stance. He is going to load up and look for that big shot. But I just think Gafurov is better on the feet. I think he's clearly better in the wrestling and clearly better in the grappling. So I think he dominates here. We've seen the line start to move already. I think he opened at like minus 180. Like I said, already down to minus 235. So I plan on betting this today. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a similar situation to Azamat Murzakanov, where he was minus 225, minus 250 range, and then he closed as like a minus 550. Like, I don't know if it quite gets that much, but I do think Gafurov gets steamed here pretty heavily, because I just think he's just a much better fighter here. I think he's going to dominate, and I'm likely going to lay it at minus 235, like I said, later today. And as always, I'll be putting in the comments below my final betting card for Dana White Contender Series, along with the Degenerate Parlay. It usually comes a day or two after I post the video, just because I'm waiting for all the books to release those. Next fight up, we have CJ Vergara versus Bruno Correa. This one's at flyweight. Bruno Correa minus 180 favorite. The comeback on Vergara is plus 155. And this is another one where we have one guy who's just fought a much better strength of schedule in Bruno Correa. He's got a loss to Matheus Nicolai, submission specialist with 7 of his 12 wins coming by sub. He's a BJJ black belt out of Brazil, but he also has a Taekwondo background. You'll see a lot of heavy leg kicks, spinning leg attacks. He actually fought on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil back in season 4 in 2015. Ended up losing in the finals, but did give a pretty good account of himself throughout the show. And like I said, that was 6 years ago, and we've seen the progression since then as well. So certainly some good things to take away from Bruno Correa. And his opponent Vergara, I'm honestly, CJ Vergara, I'm not that impressed with. He's the former flyweight champ over in Fury Fight Championship, and he's coming off a knockout win over Jacob Silva. You guys might recognize Jacob Silva from Contender Series. He fought twice on Contender Series, basically just because he has a fun fighting style. If you've ever seen him fight, definitely brings it, no doubt about it. And that's what Dana liked about him. Even though he lost his original Dana White Contender Series, they brought him back just because of basically his fighting style and how he's able to take a lot of damage and just continue to look for the finish. Ended up losing again, but then basically fought CJ Vergara for the vacant flyweight championship. Silva actually flash knocked out Vergara in the first round there, and then Vergara kind of recovered a little bit, ended up getting dropped again later in the first round. Silva just emptied his gas tank on him, threw everything but the kitchen sink all in that first round. And when he didn't get that finish, you clearly saw him start to slow. And so basically Vergara, it wasn't that impressive. He just was able to outlast Jacob Silva. And eventually in the third round, he dropped him, finished him off with ground and pound. So it wasn't like he, if you just look at it, the record, you're like, oh, third round knockout, he won by knockout. Cool. He looks good. But if you actually watch the fight, like, it arguably could have been stopped in the first round, took a lot of damage, and he's really just not all that convincing in terms of his skill set here. And like I said, I just think Correa is more well-rounded, and what it really comes down to for me is the grappling. CJ Vergara doesn't have much of a sense of grappling game, and Bruno Correa, like I said, BJJ black belt, submission specialist. I think that's a really obvious path to victory for him here. So at minus 180, I think that's about right. I'm not going to bet Correa, but in terms of the Degen Parlay, he's definitely going to be the side for me. Up next, we're going back to the bantamweight division. We have Saimon Oliveira versus Jose Alday. We don't have odds yet posted on this one, but Oliveira's 17-3, but he hasn't fought really any sort of level of competition. It's all low-level regional stuff. 11 wins by submission, but he actually likes to strike. He's kind of a banger on the feet. Think Omar Morales. That's sort of the same style that he has. He's got some nasty leg kicks. He throws everything into his punches early. He's got 11 wins by submission, but it's really the leg kicks and the boxing that he's more comfortable with. It's like he'll go to the grappling if he has to, but it's not his first game plan, really. And definitely has a really tight guillotine. That's probably his best weapon, is his guillotine. A couple red flags for me, like the level of competition. he's more of a moment fighter, not necessarily a minute winner, which is concerning, especially when you're probably taking a step up in terms of the level of competition. He actually opened. He was supposed to fight an undefeated prospect. I can't remember his name. Ended up getting scrapped. So Jose Alday's taken this fight on 5 days notice. But I bring up that fight because Oliveira is actually, he opened up as a big underdog originally, and now I'm expecting him to see him priced as a really big favorite. So it really just comes down to the price for me, but I have some concerns with seeing him as a pretty big favorite. And on the flip side, Alday taking the fight, like I said, 5 days notice. The durability is kind of a concern. He's been finishing 4 of his 5 losses. So that's the negative of Alday. The positive is he's fought a much better level of competition, including a win over John Castaneda. That's a UFC fighter. Gustavo Lopez, another UFC level fighter. He also lost against Gustavo Lopez when they ran it back, but it was still impressive to see he had a decision victory over him. Also fought Joby Sanchez in 2019. Clearly fought the better level of competition. It's also tough to back him here because the best way to describe him is he's okay everywhere, but he's not great really anywhere, which isn't something that you really want to see in someone that you're backing unless you're getting a big price tag. And that's what I keep going back to is like Alday has good boxing. It's just he lets his opponents dictate the dance too much, which I don't like. But when he does let his hands go, that's where you see he does have actual talent. Like I said, it just really comes down to the price. I'm expecting Oliveira to be a big favorite here, but I'm not sure it's warranted. I sort of alluded to that earlier. So it's really just a price thing. If the price is crazy, then I'll probably take a small stab on Alday. But in terms of the Degen Parlay, I'm going to go with Oliveira. Probably my second least confident play of the 5 fights tonight, so just keep that in mind. But I am going to go with Oliveira. I just think he's a little bit more explosive, a little bit more aggressive. Next up in the middleweight division, we have Mario Sousa going up against Chidi Bang Bang Njokuani. And this one, great nickname, by the way. But this one, Sousa is actually a minus 120 favorite now. Njokuani is plus 100. And Sousa opened as like a minus 165. So money's coming in on Njokuani. I totally understand people wanting to take a dog shot here on Njokuani. You know, a lot of people recognize the name. Like I said, cool nickname, Chidi Bang Bang. But he's fought a really legit strength of schedule over in Bellator. He had a nice run over there. He has a win over Max Griffin on the regional scene back in 2015. He's only fought 3 times in the last 4 years, though. But one of those was a main event spot against John Salter. Ended up getting subbed inside the first round. Then after that, he fought Rafael Carvalho. And you're like, Rafael Carvalho, he won a few fights over in Bellator. That's not a terrible loss. But when you look at it, Carvalho has now lost 5 of his last 6 fights. Hasn't won since like 2017. His only win in that span was against Chidi Bang Bang. Chidi Njokuani. And then since then, Njokuani has rebounded. He fought this dude Torres in his last fight, but was a big favorite, like a minus 280 favorite, and really didn't look all that great to me. First round was relatively competitive. He was huffing and puffing towards the end of the first round. So the cardio is a concern for me. He also is like that Maurice Green type. He's definitely better than Maurice Green. I'll give him that. But the striking style, like a lot of teep kicks, heavy Muay Thai background. So you see a lot of those Muay Thai kicks. But against somebody that's able to make you pay for those kicks, it's going to be an issue for me. And then, like I said, the cardio is a pretty big concern too. Even in that fight against Torres, like he ended up hurting him in the second round, trying to get a finish. Took a while to get the finish, but you see him begging the referee like, hey, are you going to stop it? And then he ended up cutting Torres above the eye with one of his elbows during that ground and pound sequence. And then he's telling the ref, hey, you want to check out that cut? Like he's basically begging for it to be stopped because he's getting tired already. And we've seen it in multiple fights on the regional scene and over in Bellator as well. People are just sort of betting him because he's fought the much better level of competition. They recognize the name, etc. But I really think just the career trajectories of these fighters are just complete opposites. Whereas in Njokuani, like I said, the activities slowed down. 3 fights in the last 4 years. Lost 2 of those 3. Only beat Torres, who wasn't really a great win in my opinion. On the flip side, Sousa hasn't really fought anybody, but he is pretty dangerous. You know, he reminds me of Kevin Holland in the sense that he has sharp striking, decent jiu-jitsu, but he gives up the takedowns and he gives up control time, and he's willing to play off his back, which I don't love. But you saw it. He actually fought on Dana White Contender Series last season, faced a wrestler. He gave up a ton of takedowns, but he won some of those minutes off his back, just willing to do more, like not necessarily working back to his feet, but landing elbows, like always constantly doing something. And the cardio checks out as well. Carried his power through all 3 rounds, ended up winning a decision, but it was kind of a controversial decision because he gave up so many takedowns, so he didn't earn the contract. They're bringing him back this year against Njokuani. And the last thing I'll say is about the cardio and power. Sousa does have power. The cardio, he's going to carry that through 3 rounds. And Njokuani, in the terms of durability, I definitely give the edge to Sousa in that department as well. And Njokuani's been finishing 6 of his 7 professional losses, 3 of those by knockout. And I just think this is one where Sousa is willing to do more. He's going to be the aggressor here. Outside of eating some leg kicks and some jabs from Njokuani, I really think Sousa looks like the favorite here. So I disagree with the line movement, and I'm actually likely going to be betting Sousa at -120. Like I said, I'll update in the comments below on my official bets for the week, along with the Degen Parlay once it's available on all books. But I definitely think Sousa's the side in this middleweight matchup. That brings us to our welterweight main event this week. We have Darian Weeks going up against Josh Quinlan. Darian Weeks, the current small favorite at -120. The comeback on Josh Quinlan is +100. And I mentioned one of the other fights, the Oliveira fight, was my second least confident pick. This is my least confident pick. So take it with a grain of salt, but I disagree with the line movement here. I actually think Quinlan should be a small favorite here, whereas Weeks has been taking some money over the past week or so, but Weeks just really hasn't fought anybody, and that's concerning. He's only like 5-0 professionally. I know he had a long amateur career. He's 1-1 as a boxer, actually just lost a split decision in boxing just back in April, so he has a little bit of a boxing background. You look at his record, he fought once over in LFA, so you're like, okay, LFA, that's a respectable win. But when you look at his opponent was 3-4, so he really just took care of business and wasn't all that impressive to me. Like, the striking is more low volume, loads up on his punches. He just doesn't really have any clear edges in terms of his skill set to me in this matchup, and that's concerning, especially when you factor in this is probably the best level of competition that he's ever had to face. So I'm hesitant on Weeks. I have a lot of questions about him, but on the flip side, I still have some questions about Josh Quinlan as well. Quinlan, the only thing I can say is he's fought the better competition over in LFA. I think he's more well-rounded. He shows off some really good leg kicks. Those calf kicks should be there all day against Darian Weeks. And he should have a physicality advantage as well. So I'm expecting him to be just a more well-rounded fighter. Like I said, strength of schedule checks out better as well. And I actually just like his skill set a little bit better on the feet. And then I think he's more well-rounded in terms of the grappling as well. Like I said, it's not a strong read on the main event. Wish it was better. But if we start to see this line balloon in favor of Weeks, it might be enough for me to take a shot on Quinlan. But I think we probably see it pretty tight come Tuesday. I'd be surprised if either guy swung to be a sizable favorite in this matchup. But we're going with the slight underdog in Josh Quinlan. So to recap for the Degen Parlay, this week we have Muin Gafurov. Like I said, that's going to be an individual bet for me in the -235 range. I think he dominates that matchup. Up next, we got Bruno Correa, -180. Not going to play it on the money line, but I do think he's the side, just a more well-rounded fighter, and I think the grappling edge is clearly there. Next fight, Saimon Oliveira going up against Jose Alday. Like I said, we don't have the odds on this one yet, so if we see Oliveira as a massive favorite, that might be enough for me to take a small poke on Alday. But taking the fight on 5 days' notice, letting his opponent dictate the dance, and also just the durability being a little bit of a question mark as well, makes me have some concerns about him. We'll go with Oliveira in terms of the Degen Parlay. Fourth fight in the middleweight division, Mario Sousa. Like I said, confident on Sousa. I just think his career trajectory checks out a lot more than Njokuani. Despite the level of competition concerns, I think he's going to be the aggressor there. I think he's going to land more volume, and I think he's more likely to finish. So in -120, we might even be able to wait and get, if this one goes off as a pick on Monday or Tuesday, that's an even better bet, obviously. So really for that one, just trying to time the market, but I do think Sousa's the side there, so we'll go with him for the Degen Parlay. And then closing it out in the main event, we'll go with the small underdog and Josh Quinlan. Like I said, not confident on that one, but yeah, we're going to go with the slight underdog. I think he's more well-rounded. I think he's got the striking advantage on the feet, and I think he's going to be the more physical fighter, the more well-rounded fighter as well. So we'll go with the small underdog and Josh Quinlan to close it out. So that's it, guys, for Dana White Contender Series Season 5, Week 2. And like I said, I'll put in the comments below on my official plays for the week, looking like Gafurov in the -235 range, Sousa in the -120. Hopefully get him as a pick if we wait another day or two. And then for the Degen Parlay that I just listed, I'll put that all in the comments below at whatever odds I get once it's posted and available on all those books, just like I did last week. Appreciate the support, guys. If you made it this long and you didn't hate the video, do me a favor and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. As always, trying to grow my channel. Good luck, and we'll see you guys next time.